Dr. Nell Thomas is with us once again. We're going to talk about another segment of the heathealth.ca website. Of course, the website talks about the impacts of global warming on our health, both today and in the future. And today we're going to talk about the segment that's called What We Eat and Drink. Dr. Thomas is a family physician from Minden. She's the founder and curator of the website called heathealth.ca. Dr. Thomas, thanks very much for joining us once again. Nice to have you with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, let's start off with kind of a global question. What is global warming doing to our food production and our food consumption? What's happening out there?
Yeah, I have some pretty scary data, I'm afraid. I was just researching for that question, and I have some numbers that are rather alarming. But I also want to talk not just about what global warming is doing to our food production, but also what our food production is doing to global warming. I'll probably spend more time actually talking about what our food production is doing to global warming. But we do know that our grocery prices are going up, that our food supply around the world is definitely jeopardized by the change in climate. And I think it was something like 21% or 21% increase in the cost of food at the grocery store since 2020 that we in North America have appreciated, US and Canada statistics. So why? Why is our food cost going up, and why are we seeing empty shelf space? We know that around the world, there's droughts, there's heat, there's extreme weather events, and what we're now calling unnatural weather events that are affecting what was arable land, which is not arable land, which is threatened arable land. And we are seeing something like a 25% reduction in 2024 of global arable land. So we are losing because of drought, because of extreme weather, because of high heat, the amount of land that's available, but also the productivity of the land. So we're seeing a reduction in crop yields, even if seeds are put in the ground and germinating. We're still seeing fewer of them come to maturity. We're also seeing less nutrition in the farmed foods. So we have a combination of things that have affected the nutrition from our foods, and that includes a degradation of soil and the health of soil. So what happens around the world when our intricately balanced food production system is threatened in various places is it really throws things off, because it is quite a choreographed dance. We've become accustomed to having foods around the year. Oranges come to us from various parts of the world, and supplies of cocoa and olive oil and avocados and all these things that we obviously don't grow here. But we're seeing such threatened ecosystems and environmental status in the countries and the places where those foods are coming from that there's a great reduction in the availability of those foods, loss of crops, and obviously even in North America we're seeing loss of farm produce because of extreme weather events, whether it's floods or heats, etc. So I wanted to talk a little bit about so that was kind of the global warming effect on food production. But what about the food production itself effect on global warming? So as we think about all the greenhouse gases and CO2 and methane that we are putting out into the world with our use of fossil fuels, and we talk a lot about reducing fossil fuels, we don't really think about the effect of the agricultural industry on our planet. And in fact, the food system is responsible for about a third, or maybe more, as much as almost 40% of global greenhouse gases. And so much of that is in fact from animal farming. So think about the amount of land that's taken up with agriculture and production of food itself. And the statistic, I think, is 38% of the land's surface is taken up with with growing food. So of that 38%, about 29% is actually used for animals, grazing animals and growing food for animals, which is about as impractical as you can get. So a huge amount of the Earth's surface is degraded to grow food for the animals, and not even, food for humans. So I think something like 1% of the Earth's surface is used for human habitation, cities and urban centers and whatnot, about 1%. So when you think about 38% of the Earth's surface taken up to grow food, and the fact that we've got an increasing human population, it's pretty scary to think how much more land, would be consumed to grow food for us. So it's a huge footprint. And there's deforestation that's happening because obviously we are increasing grazing land for these animals. There's methane being produced by the animals and the livestock. And the industrial farming methods that have been used historically have been horrific to the land. So loss of clean water and ecosystems, destruction of biodiversity as we clear, deforest and clear natural habitats, and we plant monocrops. So we've got huge swaths of land that are now devoted to one crop, corn or wheat. So we've destroyed natural habitats and cut down forests, and also the water systems as well are greatly affected by how we farm our food. And the amount of water that's used for the amount of fresh water that's used for farming and production of food is, I can't remember what the statistic is. It's 70%, I think, as much as 70% of fresh water is used to irrigate. Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling when we are looking at food wars around the world and droughts and loss of our freshwater systems. So we can certainly improve the efficiency of how we produce food, just in terms of reducing the amount of animals that we're growing for food.
So
And
this is a very dire picture that you're painting. I'm starting to feel rather ill as a result. I'm wondering, will there be future technologies or concepts that might lead to a change in how farming is conducted? Are there bright sides to this as well?
there absolutely is. So we know that pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers are quite destructive to our water systems and responsible for causing, blue-green algae and all of these other degraded water systems. So we're looking at a lot of brilliant minds and a lot of really amazing kind of future, but the future is now, technologies that are coming along that may be able to grow without using such a burden on the water systems, and also not using monocrops, but in fact returning to more of a mixed farming techniques. The regenerative food systems, the Land Institute, the Soil Institute, these are organizations that have been very much invested in looking at growing grains that are drought resistant, that are year-round crops, that are not degrading the soil as much, that are investing back into the soil, the perennial agriculture crops that are much gentler on the environment. There's also alternative proteins, and a lot of companies that are busy around the world right now coming up with pretty incredible new concepts. There's a company called Solar Foods, and they've come up with very nutrient-dense protein alternatives, and precision fermentation, which is looking at large vats that make very nutrient-dense proteins. Oftentimes you cannot distinguish them or identify what is a real meat protein versus some of these meat substitutes. So reducing the amount of animals in agriculture and livestock burden on the planet is the goal there. There's also pretty amazing technologies looking at growing underground, growing indoors using growing towers, the Replanet, Reboot Food folks, and I'm trying to think of some of the other companies. They're not coming to my mind, but there are so many competitive companies out there right now looking at alternative ways of growing, as I say, underground, indoors. I think something like 50 to 60% of Australia's tomatoes are all grown indoors. This is not new concepts. This is not new technologies. There's agrovoltaics, which is solar panels that are placed over top of outdoor farms, and they not only collect rainwater, which waters the plants, but also is protecting the plants from the heat of the sun and gathering energy through the solar panels. So agrivoltaics, solar foods, these are all really huge industries coming now, and a lot of very clever people working on the resilient crops, etc. We have to be more efficient in how we grow our foods.
Well, when I
We
look
don't have a
at
choice.
when I look at the weather that we've been experiencing recently and the heat dome that has descended upon us, and you think about the people that work on the farms, this is hard work. I don't care if you have a cab with air conditioning, but there are a lot of people, particularly the migrant farm workers, who are out there in this kind of weather. I worry for them under these conditions.
Yeah, we are dependent on migrant labor. I had some numbers here about in 2023, our agricultural industry in Canada had 70,000 migrants that come and work in, as you say, really the worst of the outdoor weather conditions. And I mean, other conditions, their housing conditions, and they really don't have healthcare, and they don't have much support in other ways when they come here. And they really work very hard outside in very unpleasant conditions. And I think 20,000 seasonal workers in Ontario last year in the seasonal agricultural worker program. They come and they make, from our perspective, not a lot of money, but they are the the grunt labor force that that we rely on to plant the seeds, water, weed, harvest, package, and get the foods to us. It's such a problem that, the inequity and the reliance on folks that are desperate from their own home countries, that Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, has recently called for protections for outdoor workers. So this includes the agricultural workers, and most of these are migrant workers. So calling for increased access to cooling stations, better awareness of heat warming warning systems. And I think President Biden has introduced some new regulations as well for protecting workers from heat. On the Heat Health website, there are some links specifically for workers outdoors and what are your rights in Ontario, to make sure that if you are an outdoor worker, that you will have work protection and protection from the elements, which we need to be a lot more aware of now for people working outside.
One of the other areas I'd love to touch on for a moment, we often look at our plates at the end of a meal, and there's a little bit of leftover. And I don't know about you, I always love leftovers, but food waste that we produce is also a concern for our climate.
Indeed, I have some more numbers for you. I feel like I'm just spewing numbers here today. So food waste, yeah, some of these numbers, about 60% of the food waste could be avoided. It's hard to know how much of these, as my husband would say, they're factoids. Where do we get these numbers from? Well, they are statistically brought to us by folks that are analyzing, and I assume there's a certain amount of credibility to these numbers, but 30 to 40% of the food grown on planet Earth is actually never eaten, apparently, which is shocking when you think about what's invested in the growing of the food and all of the, then the trucking of it, the packaging of it, putting it in the grocery stores, getting it on the shelves, taking it home, trucking it, opening it up, throwing the packages out, etc. So 30 to 40% of the food grown on the earth is never eaten. It's thrown in the garbage. That's really not acceptable when we're looking at having to improve the efficiency in our food systems. For so many reasons right now, we have to improve the efficiencies. So the average Canadian household produces 79 kilograms of food waste a year. It seems like a lot. And they say that Canada's annual food waste equals about 9.8 million tons
Wow.
of CO2, or produces about 9.8 million tons of CO2. So the thing about food waste is it produces methane as the food is rotting or decomposting. It's producing methane, which is a greenhouse gas that is far more potent than carbon dioxide. As it breaks down, it's more destructive, producing more greenhouse gases, in fact, than carbon dioxide does. So the food waste producing the methane as it's decomposing, that's something that each one of us can leap on as an action. We always think about, well, what can I do? What can I do? Thinking about, the type of food that we buy at the store, more plant-based, less meat-based. And then we have to think about the packages it comes in, but we also have to think about what happens to the food that we don't eat. And on the Heat Health website, there are some wonderful links and resources to, again, another burgeoning, industry or just focus in our society. And that is organizations that are designed to gather up the food waste and turn it into meals and rescue the food and either put it into freeze-dried or dehydrated or other food formats that can be used for meals later or shipped to other countries, in fact. So about just thinking rescuefood.ca, secondharvest.ca, Fork Ranger, those are some of the links that are very helpful for people. Mm-hmm. Wonderful ideas, really creative solutions for how to avoid wasting your food, and also connecting to organizations that are actually using this food at food surplus and increasing the sustainability of our food systems.
When I was reading the website, I came across a section that talked about our pets, and right. Even our pets are part of this patchwork of problems, if you will. And it talks about how we can be more aware, and more responsible in our pet ownership. The links provided in the section called What We Eat and Drink can not only bring awareness to this huge subject, but also some insights as to what individually we might do. heathealth.ca is a website dedicated to informing and educating about the dangers of rising temperatures. And Dr. Thomas, I want to thank you once again for joining us and sharing some of this background information. Thanks so much.
Thank you again, Mike. It's my pleasure, and I'm thrilled to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Dr. Nell Thomas is a family physician from Minden, and she is the curator of heathealth.ca website.